Hello everyone, it's Gene and I'm back with another video. I hope everybody's alright. I'm feeling a little bit better, hence why the camera's on, although my hair is a mess. My hair is a mess. But honestly, given everything I've been through in life, I'm just glad to still have a thick, mostly dark head of hair. It could be worse, right? But I hope everybody's well. I actually came across another Comic Drake uh, tweet, right? And while the video or videos that I made yesterday were a bit of a response, perhaps in snark, sarcasm, and anger, this one is a bit more inquisitive. Because I do think he poses an interesting question, which, in my opinion, centers around the idea of how much say does the original creator of a work have, especially years after the fact? And how much of that creator's opinion should we as fans take into account or consider canon? And the way I look at it is, it depends. It's a very nuanced topic, especially in comics, where you have the original creator or creators of a character or work, but then, as we all know, comics, has a constantly shifting, turning set of creatives, artists, writers, various editors, right? So the stories that are told with that character, for better or worse, constantly change, right? Interpretations of a character, for better or worse, constantly change, right? So here's what Drake says. Wait, so is it Tim Drake's creator says he was never bi, so we should respect what he has to say? Or F the Punisher's creator who is actively against how the police and military co opted his symbol? I believe it or not, fair point. And here's the way I view it. I think the ultimate source material that we have to refer to and take into account is the story, right? For example, the whole thing, at least in my opinion, about Tim Drake suddenly being bisexual is that in the 30 some years that the character has been around, and that stories have been written about him by numerous writers and artists, right, and editors, and all of this stuff. Tim Drake being bisexual has never come up, right? So to suddenly make him bi, where you have all of this canon material, right? Whether it's official stories, whether it's what if stories, whether it's stories in alternate universes or whatnot, he's never been bi, right? Now all of a sudden, when the in cool thing to do and to be is LGBTQ and to randomly take a canonically straight character, right, and make them not straight anymore, yeah, people have a right to question the motives. And they have a right to disagree with this new change if that's what they want to do. Because believe me, sooner or later, it'll be retconned. Or it will be retconned out of existence, right? Discontinuity, right? But what I find interesting about this is that, especially in comics, you'll have the creator, right, of a character, and then you will have the creator of the most iconic or character defining stories for that character. For example, using Punisher here, since Punisher's been a topic lately. Right, if I remember correctly, Jerry Conway is one of the creators, and I think he was certainly a writer for Punisher, right? But for many, some of the most iconic character defining Punisher stories are written by Garth Ennis. Another character is She Hulk, right? She Hulk's creator, or one of her creators originally in 1980, was Stan Lee. I've read some of her original run in 1980, right? He wrote some of the beginning issues, right? But if you ask many fans, even well-read comics fans of who uh, 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 wrote She-Hulk, right? The person most associated, especially when it comes to classic She-Hulk, right, is John Byrne, right? Because of her run on the Fantastic Four, where she took the Things role as the strong person. Whether it was the 1984 or 1985 graphic novel, The Sensational She-Hulk, or in particular the late 80s into the early mid 90s, excuse me, comic run, right? That actually John Byrne was on and off of, right? Because he had issues with Marvel, and so he would come and go. This is John Byrne. Anybody familiar with him in his past knows that he's a very ornery guy, right? So he always has some sort of issue with the company he's working for. But anyway, right? So he was on and off that run, but it was the late 80s going into the 90s solo series run that established many of the now iconic elements of She-Hulk. For example, the action comedy angle, right? When Stan Lee wrote the first story, it was very much your standard, action comic. It wasn't bad, sort of just middle of the road in my opinion, having read it. But it was John Byrne, who used all these B-list characters and had She-Hulk complain about them and not being taken seriously. A lot of the sight gags and jokes, the whole infamous jump rope thing, right? All that stuff was him. Her breaking the fourth wall, right, and making fun of either John himself or various comic tropes that were popular at the time. That was all him, right? So Stan Lee created the character, but in many people's eyes, John Byrne created Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, right? He created the stories uh, that have endured, that have defined the character, and that every She-Hulk run and writer since, for better or worse, has been compared to, right? For example, Stan Lee, I think it was Stan, right? Stan Lee created Spider-Man, but many feel that, for example, Todd McFarlane is the definitive Spider-Man artist and writer or whatnot, right? Or, of course, the X-Men, right? I believe, again, that was a Stan Lee creation with other people, but the most definitive writer and definitive stories for the X-Men, of course, are Chris Claremont's 15-year run from 1975 to I think about what 1990, 1991, right? And those are the stories that, whether people like it or not, right, that run is always what every X-Men story, every X-Men run since has been compared to, right? Phoenix Saga, how they constantly bring that back and reference it, or whether it's God loves man, man kills, and all that stuff, right? So there can be a huge difference, and usually is a huge difference between the creator or creators who originate a character, right? Who create that character and write their beginning stories, the original creator, and then the writer or artist or creative teams that create their most iconic stories and are sort of who are best remembered and best associated with a particular work. There's a stark contrast and difference there. Most people are not going to associate Jerry Conway with Punisher. Same way most people are not going to associate Stan Lee with She-Hulk from a creative perspective, right? So there is all that. But the thing is that, given that you have so many writers on a comic book, especially a comic character over the years, it's like, okay, should I then disregard what Garth Ennis has said about the character just because Jerry Conway may disagree? Should I disregard, say, uh, Dan Slott? Well, he should be disregarded, but my point being is that should like who do you listen to, right? Who do you listen to when you have so many cooks in the kitchen over decades of a character's existence in comics? Which creator do you listen to, right? If Dan Slott says that or take Jason Aaron, right? Right, take Jason Aaron, right? He is run on She-Hulk for me at least, right? Very depressing, right? He wrote this very depressing, no fun She-Hulk, right? Am I supposed to take his word as bond, as valid? Am I supposed to say, hey, because Jason Aaron wrote it, this is now a valid She-Hulk, right? I, as the reader, right, as the consumer, am not obligated in any way to agree with the creative decisions or the motivations behind those decisions, especially when it comes, in this case, when it comes to Conway, right, having a gripe about how, in his opinion, the military and the police have co opted his symbol, right? Once you create something and put it out into the world, and especially once other people have worked on it, and you yourself haven't worked on it in years, how much of it do you really own anymore, right? Is it really your work anymore, right? When you have all these other people, who have sort of picked up the ball and run with it. Now look, Jerry Conway, while his tweets, in my opinion, are pretty much, grumpy old man yells at sky. Yes, he's entitled to his opinions, and I'm entitled to completely disregard them. For example, if I remember correctly, he's also the one who created, or one of the ones who created Power Girl, and he wrote the first Miss Marvel solo series around in the late 70s, I think 1977. Right? If he were to tweet something, and he might have done this, but if he were to tweet something like, I think Power Girl's boobs are too large and it's insulting to women, or I think they should be covered up, I can go, okay, that's your opinion. I disagree. I have no issue with her appearance. I am very much a my eyes are up here type of person, right? And I have no problem with her design. I have never found it to be objectifying or insulting or anti-feminist or anti-female or in any of that. I'm not obligated to suddenly take Jerry Conway's word as truth just because he is the person who created the character. I'm not obligated to agree with anything he says, any creative decision or viewpoint he has on anything. I am a person with my own mind. I will decide for myself what I think and believe. Now, does he and other creators who feel that their characters have been sort of misunderstood or misinterpreted or just, I guess, misapplied in some way, or like the point has been lost over the years? Do they have a right to opine and say, hey, this isn't what I intended? Yeah, sure. And people have a right to go, maybe that wasn't what you intended, but it's what it is now. Right? I see this type of thing a lot in like music, right? Person writes a song, what they interpret the song to be, and what the audience interprets the song to be, at times can be very different, right? But in the end, I feel that sort of what the fan response is, right? Because in my opinion, especially when it comes to comics, I believe that ultimately what makes something canon or not canon is fan response. If the fans like it, it stays. If they don't like it, it goes. So, in my opinion, that's the most important thing, right? Look at the body of work as it is, right? Look at the general understanding and perception of the Punisher or any character from a fan's perspective, right? And then you take that and you compare that and you contrast it and you balance it with Conway's words or Garth Ennis' words or anything else. But again, in the end, as a reader, I'm not obligated to agree with anything. I'm not obligated to suddenly elevate Conway's words on anything on any character he originated as truth just because he said it. Now, you can get a lot of, I would say, understanding on what the original intent was when these artists speak about the creative process or what they originally intended with the character when they were first made. But especially in comics, because you have so many cooks in the kitchen, right? You have the writer, you have the artist, you have the fans, you have the business concerns, you have the people upstairs, right? Your execs, you have various editors. So many cooks are in the kitchen that an idea, your original idea, and what the final product is are oftentimes two entirely different things, right? So, in my opinion, um, go with what the canon says and ultimately go with what fans say. So, for the case of Tim Drake, canon says that up until this random point in history, he was heterosexual, right? And canon says when it comes to the Punisher, who Jerry Conway suddenly now has an issue with the police and the military co-opting the skull for the Punisher. Keep in mind, military and police have been using that skull for years. I mean, is Conway gonna suddenly take an issue with, say, pirates having a skull flag, right? Going back hundreds of years, right? The whole point of the skull is that it represents death. The Punisher represents death. He's a killer, right? He's a bad guy who kills other bad guys, right? Once you put something out there, you have no say over how your audience is going to perceive it. So for me, it's like, okay, I don't care if the police or the military have co-opted his symbol. Do you know how many edgy teenagers have co-opted the symbol? Do you know how many villains, right? How many criminals have co-opted the symbol, right? Because the symbol is simply death. That's what it symbolizes. Death. Nothing more, nothing less. Right? But yeah, he can opine all he wants. And I'm free to go, yeah, I don't agree. Right? But anyway, that's the video. Please let me know what you think, and I will see you all the next one. Have a good day or night wherever you are. Bye.